Welcome to episode number 323, where I'm speaking with Dr. Sujatha Kekada about stomach acid, how to tell the difference between low and high stomach acid, the symptoms that can manifest like heartburn, acid reflux, GERD, ulcers, and more, and the Ayurvedic treatments suggested. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Before we start this episode, I want to talk to you about my upcoming discounted group Digestive Reset Cleanse starting February 2nd, 2024. This is a great cleanse to do at the start of the year when it can be hard to get motivated with our healthy eating, healthy habits, and hard to get back into our workflow after the holiday season. This cleanse will not only help you reset your digestive system, eliminate any accumulation of toxins, balance the doshas, but also will help increase your energy, vitality, and clarity, and get you back into those good healthy eating and lifestyle habits. This cleanse comes with a 90-minute consultation with me so that I can tailor the cleanse to you. It's a holistic cleanse, so I'll be tailoring the recipes, the yoga, the mindfulness, the self-care practices, and lots more. We'll also go through this cleanse in a group format. I have a private community where we can support each other and hold each other accountable. All the elements of this cleanse are pre-recorded, so you don't have to worry about time zones. And we usually have a great international community. Check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the events page for this group Digestive Reset Cleanse starting February 2nd. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm very happy to welcome back Dr. Sujatha Kekada, who is head physician and co-founder of Amirta Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic in Ubud, Bali. Dr. Sujatha is a certified Ayurvedic doctor with a degree from Rajiv Gandhi University in India. Dr. Sujatha's profound understanding of Ayurvedic medicine and her deep love for plants is the basis for her exceptional ability to diagnose the root causes of diseases and to find effective remedies. Combining her intuition and compassion with a bright intelligence and a rock-solid pragmatism, she is able to effectively guide people truly individually, just as the spirit of Ayurveda demands. Dr. Sujatha, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Colette. It's great that, beginning of the new year, we're starting with today's podcast. I believe it's going to be an interesting topic and the fundamental for our health. So Thank you for inviting me again.
Of course. Yeah, it is the perfect subject, which we're going to talk about acid reflux, heartburn, GERD, all that, those acidic conditions, especially after the holiday season, Dr. Sujatha, where I think there's a universal feeling of a struggle, first of all, getting back into routine and healthy eating after, the routine goes out the window during the holidays and we're eating rich foods and maybe there's holiday alcohol as well. And so this can lead to a lot of acidity in the body and just feeling out of sorts. So definitely a good thing to discuss. So let's get straight into it. What is stomach acid, first of all, and what is Ayurveda's view on the doshas involved in these gastric juices?
Mm-hmm. Stomach acid, it's one of the components that's essential for our food to digest, which is produced in our stomach. It is called hydrochloric acid. So basically, this is essential for us to digest protein and also process iron, calcium, and B12, these essential micronutrients that's needed for building up of blood, and protein that's needed up for building our cells. So the biggest nutrients that we need to keep our body tissue alive begins its digestion, the building blocks of our body that takes place. It begins in our stomach, and hydrochloric acid is the gastric juice that's necessary and important to begin this digestive process of one of the heaviest components of our nutrition.
Right. And thanks for that. And so is it true that Pitta would be mostly responsible here?
Yes. Looking into in a holistic approach, digestive juices, anything which does a transformative effect in our body, and digestive system is directly linked to process of transformation, meaning we eat food in, many different forms, and it exactly becomes our own body tissue. It exactly produces energy, repairs cells, and produces hormones and other enzymes. So this is a transformation process. The food, carrots or beetroot or kale, whatever looks in different forms and different color, end of the day, when the process finishes, it turns into our body tissue. So anything which is transformative, it is connected to Pitta. And here, Ayurveda also talks about another concept, agni, which is particularly related to the process of digestion, transformation, which inherits the qualities of Pitta. So we can say the hydrochloric acid is a correlation or directly connected to the features and the functions, attributes of Pitta and Agni together.
And so Agni can be considered like the fire energy in the body. So it has similar qualities to that of Pitta, right?
Yes. There is a difference. We need to keep this in mind. Sometimes people have lots of Pitta, but they may not have enough Agni. This is we're going to discuss today, in clarifying the high acid and low acid concept. So we can come back to when we talk about that. So Agni is dry. Pitta is moist. Pitta has the quality of heat and moist together. And Agni, when we talk about Agni, which helps to digestion or transformation, which is more in a dry quality. So that's a difference. So in order to Pitta to have the quality of the Agni, it need to be more dry, and Pitta contains the moisture.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And I'd love to go on to now to talk about what you just highlighted there, because this is a huge question. A lot of people think they might have high stomach acid when in fact they have low stomach acid. So can we talk about the difference between high and low stomach acid and what the symptoms are of each of these? Because I think there's massive confusion around this.
Yeah. So because I think it's also quite confusing, some symptoms of high acid and low acid could be very similar, unless you do some specific test and look very closely your digestion process, your elimination. It can be misunderstood for a low acid into high acid, and you can start taking proton pump blockers to prevent the production of hydrochloric acid and worsening the situation. Let's talk about the low acid. As I mentioned, that hydrochloric acid, this acid is necessary to digest the protein breakdown, and because protein is something heavy to digest. And yes, fat is also heavy to digest. That part is taken care by our bile juice by emulsifying the fat and digesting it. So stomach doesn't play a major role when it comes to digesting the fat, but protein protein needs hydrochloric acid to break these fibers of protein or the protein molecules and break it down into amino acids. So when we have low acid, we may feel that food gets just stagnant in our stomach. It doesn't move through because it doesn't get broken down and move through. Or we can also see a lot of undigested food in our stool. Basically, malabsorption takes place because protein doesn't get digested. One may experience weight loss or particularly paleness because iron, calcium, B12, which is also a very important component for production of hemoglobin. These things are lacking in the body. So malnourished symptom, hair fall, bad quality of nails, joint problems, pale looking skin, lack of energy, feeling fatigue. This is kind of, if it prolongs for a long period of time, a malnutrition symptoms one can see. But directly, it's a feeling of food getting stuck, not moving, and feeling undigested, seeing a lot of undigested food in the stomach can be indication of low acid. And also not with all people, but there is a majority of the people you can experience lack of sense of hunger. Which in Ayurveda we call agni, which is related to one of the expression of the agni is hydrochloric acid, and also all the other enzymes also the reflection of agni. So not having enough agni, poor agni can also indicate like not feeling sense of appetite and hunger. That also can indicate a low acid.
Yeah.
And we go on.
No, I was going to say, because there can be confusion there, I find when I'm talking to people, is that they say, I don't have hunger, and they may think it's more kapha, agni manda, but in fact it's not. It's low stomach acid.
Yeah, it could be. Start with, it's an early stage of that because the Agni Mandya can go beyond just the functioning of your digestive system. It can go deeper into liver and then into your cellular level, like the cellular metabolism being affected. So the early stage is the low stomach acid. And that's why when we are sick, our body doesn't produce these enzymes efficiently. So we do feel lack of appetite and hunger. So we need to build up the hunger, build up the Agni, build up support food that can produce enough hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, and bile juice and stuff. And if we look into high acid, this is more obvious. And before I go into the details of high acid, I also want to bring it across. When we have, this is a common symptoms, it can be confusing in people to understand whether they have a low or high. One thing we experience is like a little mild acid reflux, and you feel like an air bubble, burping happens, and you feel a little bit of burning in your throat, not a severe, but an acid. This can happen when you have a low acid too. This is because acid is so low, you eat the food, it's not able to digest the food, and the food start to ferment in your stomach. And when it ferments, it creates air bubbles. And that air bubbles containing a little bit of hydrochloric acid moves up, and then it creates this mild acidity, burning sensation, and burping with acid burps. This is a mild stage. But when we look into hyper acidity, where we've experienced without having to eat the food, you might wake up empty stomach where the acid is secreted into your stomach cavity, and you feel severe heartburn, including pain, acidity, and also other symptoms of high acid like heat sensation, literally called heartburn, like behind your sternal area, you feel pain and burning sensation. It can also lead into a little bit of a loose bowels and a feeling of sensation of hunger, never feeling satiated. These are the symptoms. And also it can, both the cases, hypo and hyper, can create the impairment of the environment of your intestinal mucosa and make it easy for the H. pylori, high infections that are commonly people suffer with digestive related issue, Helicobacter pylori, that can trigger the acidity, and that can also cause hypo hydrochloric acid situation. So main difference between hyper and hypo is in hyper cases, without eating food, one may feel a lot of acid buildup, stronger heartburns, burping with acid, bilious feeling, all those things. In hypo, the more of the acid reflux start to happen after eating and the food feels more stagnant. But in hyper, it may run through much more faster and constantly feeling hungry could be another symptom.
Oh, very good. That's a great explanation. Thank you for that. And you mentioned H. pylori there. And so I'd love to talk about, what can cause this high stomach acid. Let's talk about high stomach acid, the hyper stomach acid, and then how it can manifest into certain conditions. If we could talk about that now, that would be great.
Unchecked early on conditions like that, here and there we are traveling or had too much of alcohol in sometimes, and chances are there you're producing too much of acid, or you ate a very spicy food, or you drank a lot of kombucha. These things can trigger hyperacidity, and it's a temporary reaction to something you ate with wrong combination, wrong time of the day. Just by, resting and eating some alkaline food, these things can be taken care. But if this happens a prolonged period of time, if somebody drinks alcohol on a regular basis or eats too much of heating food or too much of fermented food, this can become a chronic condition and can lead into overgrowth of Helicobacter pylori. Also can lead into some of the condition like GERD, like acid reflux constantly happening, and with stomach pain and cramps and all those things, particularly in the epigastric area, which is at the bottom of your chest bone, the tail of the chest bone. And one of the common symptom is when you press on that point with the bottom of your chest bone, one may feel a strong tenderness and pain that indicates that there is an acid, and behind the wall of that, some inflammation in your stomach area or the sphincter between your stomach and the beginning of the small intestine or the duodenum. So, and ulcers, and also can lead into bleeding in the stomach when it is not checked. Ulcers, it's like a wound in the mucous membrane, and those ulcers can rupture and then can cause bleeding, internal bleeding, and can have a severe consequences. And these ulcers can get infected and can lead into septicemia in worst case scenario.
And then H. pylori, you mentioned that a moment ago.
Yeah, this to a small quantity, it's normal in majority of the population to have a small quantity of this bacteria in being. When they overgrow, then it becomes trouble, because it's like they kind of sticks onto the walls of your mucous membrane, and they can lead into ulcers. It's almost like the eating of the mucous membrane of the stomach. Chronic stomach pain, discomforts. This is what people suffer when there is overgrowth of H. pylori.
And then the stomach acid, again, too high, it can really affect the lining, as you said, the mucosa lining as well.
Yes.
With the ulcers.
That's when the ulcers start to happen.
Yeah.
Like a, burn. It's a wound.
Yes, exactly. This is a very acidic substance. It's like pouring acid on, that we have maybe in our home on something, like on a carpet, would burn right through it.
Absolutely. Apart from, extreme things like too much of alcohol, spicy food, smoking, antibiotics, steroid medication on a long time. These are the things which can lead into. But the common thing that I've noticed that the cause for, other than these obvious factors, is worry, over worrying, overthinking. When we feel like heated up in our head, that eventually that heat, it's like, aggravation of pitta. It has to move somewhere, right? So it moves down in the physical body experiences what we emotionally feel. And biggest target is your stomach. It produces too much of acid too. And also people who do not eat when they're hungry. So, because they're busy with work, they just chuck cups of coffee all the time, not eating the food. Coffee is very acidic, and a nice cup of coffee an hour after you wake up can be really stimulating, getting you focused on the work you want to done, motivation, all those things. But if you drink a lot of coffee to keep yourself alert and push your body and mind to work, and you don't eat the food, it also can trigger over acid production and leading into other consequences. So not eating when your body produces hydrochloric acid and not having anything to digest, anything to use this acid, it's going to eat your stomach membrane.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And as well, if you're having coffee on an empty stomach, it's harsh. And as well as suppressing your appetite too.
Absolutely. And we don't feel the hunger, but body produces acid because coffee is acid. It stimulates your body to produce acid. And then just sits there, and then it just eats off, melts off the membranes.
And I'm glad you mentioned about, the intensity of pitta in particular, dosha, when we're being intense, whether that's being at work, being competitive, intense in our emotions, stressful times, rigidity, that has an effect on pitta. Sometimes we just think about the foods and the drinks we're having. But just what's going on in our emotional, mental body as well can produce this and that intensity, like you talked about.
Absolutely. And if you see by nature, if you can tune into that, there is a correction mechanism within that. Pitta people, they need intensity, they need transformation, they have a high energy and focus comes in a spurts of time. And after that, if you see a Pitta person, they want to go into their cave, rest, relax, not bothered. And they have a general plan of how to unwind themselves by keeping themselves in a quiet place, chilling, relaxing, listening to music. They do need a lot of personal quiet time. And if that's the nature, because they build like that to focus with intensity, get things done, leadership qualities and high achieving and all those things, but they also need a amount of time to recover. And that's when, if you fail to do that, then it's continuous heat buildup, because it's almost like you heat up a metal to malleate and transform into something, and you eventually have to cool it down. If you don't cool it down, it's just going to break.
Yeah, that's why we call it burnout, right?
Yeah.
You're literally burning yourself out. Well, great points there. And so how does Ayurveda treat high stomach acid? These conditions, we have different names on them in Western medical system. Like you said, GERD, heartburn, all this, H. pylori, but they are all coming from the same root problem, right? Overactive.
We see this as increased pitta and or tikshna agni. Here, here comes the understanding and differentiation, because one may have too much of pitta, but they may have low acid. So because that's where the agni concept I said, agni is ruksha, means dry, pitta is wet. So you can have too much of wet pitta. It's like a weak acid, and body feeling inflamed, having skin rashes, all those things, which is a signs of increased pitta, but you may not be having good digestion, ability to digest and process food, which in turn create this inflammation and increasing the pitta. So it's something is hot, but it's not intense and dry enough to transform the food that you eat. So it could be a agni vaishamya, means something wrong with your agni, or it can be too low pitta, or could be too high pitta, creating this issue. So we look into, if it is low agni, hypo acidity, then we look into how to increase your agni, which is not that difficult. This very well-known medical medium who talks a lot about this celery juice concept. Basically, celery juice helps in increasing your hydrochloric acid. So doing that for a period, and you can correct any out of balance growth of H. pylori. You can increase a good amount of acid and hence correct the digestion. And when you drink these juices, there's nothing else in it. So you also avoid a lot of sugar and all those things. So it's a natural method to balance your agni. So basically, you give simple alkalizing food through celery, and it helps to increase your hydrochloric acid, increases your agni. And in Ayurveda, we use herbs like ginger, cinnamon, and also there is a lot of arishtas, Vaishwamrita, arishta, Pippalya. These things can help. These are the fermented preparations, mustarishta, all those things, which is to boost your agni, boost your hydrochloric acid, hence sense of hunger, processing and breaking down of the protein in your stomach start to happen better, and absorption of iron, calcium, and B12 happens better. So one is focusing on agni, and if your pitta is too high and it is creating inflammation, you want to reduce the inflammation, not just in your stomach, not just in your digestive system, all part of the body. What you feel in the body, it is also reflected in your intestines too. So this is a usual approach we take. And this is not the time you should be doing fasting and stuff. If you have low agni, you want to do a process in Ayurveda we call agni deepana. That means you kindle the fire, you stimulate the production of hydrochloric acid. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if you have a high acid, then you want to calm it down. So we call tikshna agni, that intense agni, or a disease called bhasmaka. That means whatever you eat, everything gets burnt. That means it turns into ash. It's not in the form the cells can use it. It's not anymore nutrition, because hydrochloric acid, too much, it burns it off, doesn't convert it into a form of nutrition that the body cells can identify. So you want to dampen a little bit of the production of hydrochloric acid. We use a few bhasma preparations like a shanka bhasma. We use licorice-based preparations, either licorice tea, licorice churna, pravala bhasma, another ash preparation from corals, and another vegetable very well spoke by Sadhguru called the winter melon or ash gourd juice is very good in reducing the acidity and alkalizing your system. And you want to make sure that when your acid is high, you want to eat heavy food. Here you can eat good amount of protein, fat, a lot of fruits, and all those things compensate the heat and intensity of the hydrochloric acid in your body.
Okay, great. And like you said, there's two very different approaches there, because if you have high pitta, low stomach acid, you want to increase the stomach acid, the hydrochloric acid, without aggravating the pitta, in which case you're using the alkalizing celery juice or non-pungent warming spices.
Absolutely. Yeah. You cannot just go and think, oh, I have low acid, let me eat a lot of chili or, tomatoes or things like that. So you need to make sure that they are not inflammatory in nature.
Yeah, so that's why, as in Ayurveda, there's no one size fits all. It really needs to be a tailored approach, even when it comes to the celery juice, which has been a popular trend, but that's not going to be beneficial for everybody, because if you have, other conditions going on, that may be aggravating. So really important to get tailored advice to your condition and to understanding your condition. So thank you for that clear explanation. And then we didn't talk about the manifestation of low stomach acid like we did with high stomach acid, but the low stomach acid you'd be seeing undigested food in the stool, right?
Yes. And stagnation, feeling that the food doesn't move.
Right. And that heaviness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Malnourished symptoms.
Malnourished symptoms.
Yeah. You might be eating a lot of animal protein, but you see your iron levels and B12 levels are low. So then you kind of need to think, okay, I'm not really digesting and absorbing these nutrients because my hydrochloric acid is not enough.
Okay. And then in that case, you would if it is a low stomach acid and then low pitta, then you would be bringing in more the heating qualities to stimulate the digestive fire.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
There, the fermented food would be helpful.
Exactly.
Apple cider vinegar or a little bit of kimchi or sauerkraut. Yeah. If you're having, low acid but high pitta, kimchi is not ideal. Sauerkraut would work.
Yeah. Okay. So low stomach acid, high pitta, staying away for fermented acidic products.
Yeah.
Great. How do we prevent these conditions from manifesting? Some advice for people.
Feed the agni. When you're hungry, feed it. It's like you have the flame, feed it so that the agni can do its processing the food, and don't let the flame be idle and eat your own intestinal mucosa. So having discipline or like a nutrition hygiene, eating when you are hungry, eating the right amount of the food with the right combination, the right way of eating, that itself will take care of these acid issues. And then when you kind of, fall sick, with the infections and all those things, then when you come out of the illnesses of finishing of the medication, nurturing your gut with probiotics, giving simple food that increases agni. It's the same concept like when we start making a fire outside for a campfire or barbecue, we're not going to put the big logs of wood and, try to light it with the lighter. We get a little bit of kindling materials, some hay or piece of paper or small pieces of wood. So when we get sick, when our agni is, weak, kindle it up with soups and some khichdi and cooked apple with cinnamon and baby food like that. When the hunger increases, then you give more solid food. In that way, the body naturally knows how to recover the hydrochloric acid, which got affected by some infections. Or stress related, as I said, there's nothing wrong in doing intense workout, intense thinking, transforming things, but take enough time to relax and unwind yourself. And unnecessary being in reaction or constantly angry and irritable, work on that. What triggers you? Because we are not supposed to be all the time feeling miserable and angry and upset. Ayurveda talks about the purpose of Ayurveda is to make your life worth living and making it happier, joyful. So the tools are there. So if we're constantly getting triggered and grumpy and upset, definitely it will lead into, increased pitta and high acid. Look into it, how you can avoid this trigger, what's the root cause of it, how you can reflect and make changes.
Great points. Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I want to cover here, Dr. Sujatha, is we have a huge amount of medication readily available for people over the counter to hide these symptoms, right? To cover these symptoms. And we're hearing a lot of people just taking over the counter to help with this heartburn and acid reflux, and these protein pump inhibitors now, which I'm seeing a lot of people are taking. I want you to discuss that, of course, the risk of not dealing with the root problem, but also the risk of the long-term use of these medications, which people can end up taking for a long time.
Yeah. And eventually they can weaken their body's ability to produce the right digestive enzymes and stuff. That's a long time. And when you stop it, and then you can have a high acid building up because you did not do anything to correct the original problem. You just put a lid on it. Yeah. And if your high acid coming because of the H. pylori infection or overthinking or diets that contains a lot of acid increasing food, or you're drinking a lot of coffee and you ignoring, because you can mask this discomfort from high acid, but the actual causes causing this problem can go deeper and unnoticed and manifest other diseases, stress leading into strokes, or too much of coffee leading into arthritis because caffeine depletes the absorption of calcium. So it can lead into many other chronic illnesses if we are not addressing the acid issue. I won't say that I would not use them at all or wrong to use, but in the early stage, okay, you can't sleep and you're constantly feeling this severe pain and acid moving up, particularly when you lie down, affects your sleep. Okay, you take it and make the other changes and then get out of it.
Yeah. Great information here, Dr. Sujatha. Thank you so much, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion around this, and I think we've cleared up a lot today. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we finish up? And also, I'd love for you to tell people more about where they can find out more about you and your offerings.
Nothing significant, but I would just suggest people pay attention to your sensation of hunger. Eat when you're hungry and have a balanced meal containing, whether you're vegetarian or vegan, some protein sources like beans and legumes if you're vegetarian, vegan, and if you're eating, animal protein in an ethically sourced small quantity of, fish or chicken, to have that lot of vegetables, whole grains, keep that. And if you not a very physically active person, in the sense your job doesn't require physical activity, you sit in a desk and you go to gym to move your body, then I would suggest stick to 2 meals a day and eat at the junction time of kapha finishing, pitta starting around 10 o'clock, and then in the evening around 6 o'clock, keep the evening meals lighter, and in between have some fruits or some healthy snacks to eat. So I think this way of eating 2 meals is mostly enough for most of us, because our life is quite stagnant. And if you're a very particularly pitta and you wake up feeling hungry, enjoy 3 meals a day. You have a great digestive fire and good hydrochloric acid, which makes you capable of digesting the food easily. So I would say that, and stress and worry, find a way to deal with it. Through nowadays, there are so many tools that you can use to work against stress and worry and fear. So don't ignore those things and try to take a pill to sleep or suppress the discomfort of hyperacidity and stuff. So, this is my bottom line. From my experience, what I can say to people. And if anybody's interested in doing a panchakarma or taking one-on-one advice on your nutrition, diet, or any health problem, you can reach me through our website, www.amritasiddhi.com, or our Facebook or Instagram. And you can directly send a text message through our Instagram page for any inquiry or interest you have got. And of course, Panchakarma, the transformative processing program. If you're dealing with a health issue, I highly recommend that for you. Or if you're trying to make some changes and study deeper to understand your own health and well-being as a preventative care, you can also do the Panchakarma programs. Yeah. For that, you need to dedicate at least 12 days time.
Exactly. Wonderful. And I'll put those links in the show notes. And of course, we just got back from the 7-day Ayurvedic rejuvenation retreat that I did with Dr. Sujatha in Amrita City at the start of December. Amazing. Highly recommended. I think it's the best gift and investment in ourselves to take time out and go into the amazing healing cocoon of Amrita City. The staff, the experience, the energy, the care you get in Amrita City is just 5-star and amazing. So yeah, I'm a big promoter of Amrita City and all it has to offer. And thanks again, Dr. Sujatha, for a wonderful retreat. It was absolutely beautiful.
You're welcome, and thank you too.
So Dr. Sujatha, thank you so much for all this information. And I look forward to discussing our next disease soon with you. I think this is great information that we're putting out there for people. And I appreciate you sharing the wisdom and your experience with us.
Yeah, and thanks for offering this. And for the listeners, if any area of your health or any questions you have got, feel free to post that in where you listen this podcast, or any topics that you would like us to discuss and bring some insights on. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes where you can share topics that you want us to cover. Dr. Sujatha, until next time, thank you so much. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Colette. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Ciao. I hope you found this conversation with Dr. Sujatha helpful. I know there's always other questions around high and low stomach acid. So lots of questions answered there with Dr. Sujatha's experience. If you think that this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this Ayurvedic wisdom. And check out all the links in the show notes, including my email, where you can do suggestions for further topics to discuss with Dr. Sujatha. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to the upcoming group Digestive Reset Cleanse starting February 2nd and all my other online offerings. If you haven't already subscribed or followed the podcast, please do so. And the new weekly episodes will automatically download for you. And if you would like to rate or review the podcast, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take good care of yourself. Be well and bye for now. Slán go fóill.